The smell of ozone and wet pine hit me the moment I cracked the window of the rental truck, a sharp, metallic warning that the sky was about to break open. I unfolded myself from the cab, my boots crunching heavily on the gravel as I tested my weight against the ground. Being 6'5" meant most vehicles felt like cages, and the 3-hour drive up the winding mountain pass had left a dull, throbbing ache in my lower back that no amount of stretching would fix immediately. I checked my phone, hoping for one last update from home. The bars in the corner of the screen were gone, replaced by a searching icon that was destined to fail. The only thing on the screen was the background photo, my 6-year-old daughter, Maya, grinning with a missing front tooth, holding up a glittery plastic dinosaur. A pang of guilt hit me in the chest, familiar and heavy. I missed her already, even though she was safe with my mother for the week. I muted the phone, shoved it deep into my jacket, and stared at the black tree line until the wind burned my eyes. I needed to remember what the world sounded like when no one was asking me to justify a budget or cut a corner on a safety regulation. I shouldered my heavy canvas duffel bag and walked toward the main lodge of the summit. It was a sprawling timber structure that looked like it had grown out of the rock itself, ancient and sturdy, promising the kind of isolation I was desperate for. But my eyes snagged on something wrong instantly. A bright orange sticker was plastered unevenly on the heavy oak door. Notice of violation. Do not enter. Condemned. I stopped mid-stride. The wind picked up, biting through my flannel shirt, carrying the first stinging grit of sleet. I didn't move. I read the code cited in Sharpie scrawl. Section 404, watershed contamination, nitrogen effluent. My brow furrowed. I knew Section 404. I had literally written the amendment for the state guideline 3 years ago to protect salmon spawning grounds. The citation code was outdated. They had reclassified that subsection 6 months ago. Whoever wrote this was either incompetent or working off a 10-year-old rulebook. The door swung open before I could knock. A woman stood there, looking like she'd been fighting a war she was rapidly losing. She was older than me, maybe late 30s, with dark hair pulled back in a severe knot that was starting to fray at the temples. Her eyes were red-rimmed but fierce, holding a stack of papers like a shield against the world. She wore a thick wool sweater that swallowed her frame, but her posture was rigid steel. "We're closed," she said. Her voice was tight, vibrating, with a stress frequency I recognized. From a mile away, the sound of someone holding it together by a thread. If you're the guy from the bank, you're early. If you're the inspector, you're late. Guest, I said, my voice coming out lower than I intended, a rumble in my chest that seemed to vibrate the porch boards. I held up my reservation printout, which was now damp with the starting rain. Langston Mitchell, cabin 4. She blinked, the fight draining out of her for a second, replaced by a hollow exhaustion that made her look 5 years older. "Oh, Mr. Mitchell. I emailed you. The reservation was canceled." "No signal," I said, gesturing to the gray, churning sky. "I've been driving since Portland. My GPS cut out at the ridgeline." She looked at the sky, then at the orange sticker, then back at me. She seemed to measure my size, my silence, the mud on my boots. She took a breath. "The county red-tagged the septic system an hour ago. They're claiming effluent runoff into the creek. I can't legally rent you a cabin. I can't legally have anyone on the property." I looked at the ground. The soil near the porch was dry, compacted granite. I took a slow breath through my nose. No smell of sewage. No lush, overgreen patches of grass that would indicate a leak. I walked to the edge of the porch and sniffed the air again. Just pine, wet earth, and incoming snow. "It's not leaking," I said. She let out a short, harsh laugh. "Tell that to Mr. Vance. He says he found nitrogen spikes in the lower stream. He's shutting me down. I have 48 hours to vacate before they condemn the title." The wind howled, slamming a loose shutter against the siding somewhere around the back of the lodge. A fat drop of rain hit my cheek, icy and hard. The storm wasn't waiting for her legal troubles. "I can't go back down," I said, looking at the road. The gravel was already slick with freezing rain. "Roads will be ice in 20 minutes. My truck is rear-wheel drive. I'd be sliding off the cliff before the first switchback." She hugged the papers tighter to her chest. She looked at her Volvo parked in the drive, then at my truck. She was calculating the liability, the risk, the rules. "You can't stay here," she said, her voice wavering. "It's illegal. If Vance comes back..." "I'm an environmental consultant," I said. The words felt heavy, like they always did. I specialize in hydrological compliance. I write the codes Vance is citing, and your system isn't leaking. Her eyes widened. She looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time. She saw the heavy work boots, the stillness in my posture, the lack of panic. You're a what? Policy expert? Eco-compliance. I shifted my weight, trying to make myself look smaller, less threatening. If I verify the system is clean, the tag is void until a hearing. It's a loop in the state bylaws. Subsection C, 12. The presumption of innocence via independent audit clause. She hesitated. The rain began to fall in earnest, icy sheets sweeping across the deck, soaking the shoulders of my jacket. She was shivering. I instinctively stepped to the side, blocking the wind with my body so it wouldn't hit her directly. It was a reflex, protect the perimeter. Come inside, she whispered. The main lodge was freezing. The boiler is on the same circuit as the septic pump. Veronica, she'd introduced herself while locking the door behind us, explained, pacing the living room. Vance cut the power to the external grid at the breaker box. He put a padlock on it. He said it was a safety precaution to prevent further contamination. It's an intimidation tactic, I corrected quietly. I set my duffel bag down by the door, careful not to track mud on the rug. He wants to freeze you out so you miss the appeal window. The room was expansive, with high vaulted ceilings and a massive stone fireplace that was currently dark. Veronica was vibrating with anxiety, her hands trembling as she tried to light a match for the kindling. She dropped the matchbox, her fingers too stiff from the cold. Let me. I knelt beside her. I didn't ask for the matches. I just picked them up from the hearth. My hands were large, scarred from years of field testing and weekend projects, dwarfing the small box. I struck the match gently, shielding the flame with my cupped hand. I built the fire systematically tinder first, then small sticks, waiting for the catch before adding the split logs. He wants the land, Veronica said, her voice thin. She was standing behind me, hugging her arms. Vance. He's got a cousin in development who's been trying to buy me out for 2 years. I refused. I told him this place wasn't for sale. Now this? I stood up, dusting ash from my jeans. The fire crackled, casting a warm, flickering glow that finally touched the pale curve of her cheek. She looked strong, but brittle, like glass that had been tapped one too many times. Show me the report. She handed me the crumpled stack of papers. I sat at the heavy wooden dining table, pulling a pen from my pocket. For 10 minutes, the only sound in the room was the growing roar of the fire and the scratching of my pen on the paper. Veronica stood by the window, watching the snow begin to bury her livelihood. He cited a nitrogen spike of 40 parts per million, I said, not looking up. But he didn't log the ambient temperature or the flow rate. And, looking at this map, he took the sample from the downstream confluence. Is that bad? She asked, turning to face me. It's invalid, I said. There's a horse ranch 2 miles up that creek. Without an upstream control sample, he can't prove the nitrogen is yours. It's lazy science. Or malicious. Does it matter? She walked over to the table, her hands flat on the wood. He posted the tag. I'm shut down. By the time I get a court date, the bank will pull my loan. I'm done, Langston. She used my name. It sounded different when she said it, crisp, authoritative, but with a soft edge of despair. I have a field kit in my truck, I said. I always travel with it. I can run a dye test, verify the tank integrity, check the pH balance of the soil. If I sign an affidavit, the bank has to hold the foreclosure. She stared at me. Why would you do that? You're a guest. You're supposed to be relaxing. You're supposed to be on vacation. I don't like bullies, I said simply, and I really don't like bad data. I stood up to go get my gear. Wait. She stepped in front of me. She was tall, 5 to 9 maybe, but I still towered over her. She had to crane her neck to look me in the eye. I can't pay you, not a consultant rate. I can barely pay the electric bill right now. I put everything into the renovations last year. I didn't ask for payment. I pay my own way, she said, her chin lifting. It was a spark of pride that I admired instantly. I'm not a charity case. If you work, we trade. Room and board. And I make a hell of a pot roast. I looked at her. She was terrified of losing everything. Yet she was negotiating terms. She was holding on to her dignity with both hands. I nodded once and held out my hand. Deal, I said, shrinking the space between us to a handshake. The storm hammered us for the next 2 days. The power stayed out. The lodge became a capsule of firelight and silence. I spent the daylight hours outside, trudging through thigh-deep snow to the septic field. It was brutal work. I had to dig out the inspection ports with a shovel, my breath pluming in the freezing air, my hands numbing inside my gloves. It was real. It wasn't a boardroom where men in suits argued about profit margins. It was dirt and pipe and truth. Veronica didn't just watch. She put on a parka and snowshoes and hauled the equipment sled behind me. She held the flashlight while I lowered the fiber optic camera into the riser. Wrench? She asked, holding out the 10 millimeters. Thanks, I grunted, twisting the bolt. You know your way around a septic field? I know my way around my mountain, she corrected. My dad built this system. I helped him lay the pipe when I was 12. I paused, looking up at her. Her nose was pink from the cold, snow catching in her eyelashes. Hold the light steady, I said. I need to check the timestamp on his entry log. I wiped the mud from the inspection tag Vance had left inside the casing. I checked my own watch, then pulled up the weather history on my cached data. He marked this inspection at 2 p.m. on Tuesday, I said, my voice hardening. Tuesday at 2 p.m.? The atmospheric pressure dropped. It was raining sideways. I pointed to the dust inside the casing. This dust is dry, bone dry. He didn't open this hatch on Tuesday. He filled out the log from his truck. Veronica stared at the dry dust. He falsified the inspection. He never inspected it at all, I said, which means we can hang him on procedure. We worked in silence for another hour, the rhythm of the task binding us together. Dig, verify, record. By late afternoon, we were back in the utility shed, sheltering from a particularly vicious gust of wind. I have a daughter, I said. Veronica softened, her expression shifting from guarded to gentle. Is she with her mom? My mom, I corrected. Her mother isn't in the picture. She wanted a different life. One that didn't involve a husband who smelled like soil samples and worked 80 hours a week. I'm sorry. Don't be. Maya is the best thing that ever happened to me. I tightened a valve, perhaps a little too hard. I worry I'm too boring for her. She likes glitter and loud music. I like this. Silence. Fixable problems. Safety isn't boring, Langston, Veronica said quietly. Reliability isn't boring. It's everything. It's the foundation. She reached out and brushed snow off my shoulder. Her hand lingered for a fraction of a second, the weight of it burning through my jacket. I stood perfectly still, letting her touch ground me. We should get the dye, I said, my voice rough. Right, she said, stepping back quickly. The dye. We went back inside to warm up before the final test. The satellite internet flickered to life for a brief window, just enough for my phone to ping. A video call request from my mom. Answer it, Veronica said, moving to the kitchen to start the pot roast. Please. I accepted the call. Maya's face filled the screen, pixelated but bright. Daddy! Grandma let me make cookies, she shouted, holding up a lump of dough that vaguely resembled a star. Are you in the woods? Did you see a bear? No bears, Peanut, I said, my voice instantly softening. Just a lot of snow, and a big house made of logs. Show me. I turned the camera around. Veronica was at the counter, chopping carrots. She looked up, startled, then waved hesitantly. Hi, Maya chirped. Are you the bear? Veronica laughed, a warm sound that filled the kitchen. No, I'm Veronica. I own the log house. My daddy is fixing it, Maya stated with absolute confidence. He fixes everything. He certainly does, Veronica said, meeting my eyes over the screen. When the call ended, the silence in the kitchen wasn't empty anymore. It felt lived in. That night, the temperature plummeted. The fire in the main lodge was the only thing keeping the cold at bay. Veronica brought out blankets, thick wool quilts that smelled like lavender and cedar. The guest cabins are freezing, she said. The pipes might burst out there if we don't keep the water moving. But there's no heat. You have to stay in here. I can sleep in the chair, I said, nodding toward the leather armchair by the hearth. Don't be ridiculous. You're the size of a mountain. You'll cripple yourself. She pointed to the sofa. It was a love seat, barely 5 feet wide, covered in decorative pillows. Take the couch. I looked at the couch. Then I looked at her. She was trying to be hospitable, trying to be the hostess even while her world was collapsing. But I knew that couch. I'd slept on too many like it. My feet would hang off, my neck would crank, and I'd be in her space. I'm fine on the floor, I said. Langston, I'm serious. I've slept on worse. I pulled the cushions off the sofa and laid them on the rug in front of the fire, creating a makeshift pallet. I grabbed my sleeping bag from my duffel. This is perfect. Really. She watched me set up camp. You're stubborn? Focused, I said. And comfortable. She sat on the edge of the hearth, wrapping a quilt around her shoulders. Vance is coming back tomorrow. At noon. Even if your test proves the tank is sealed, he can claim the soil permeability is the issue. He can cite the visual nuisance clause. He has a playbook. He can try, I said, sitting on my pallet, feeding a log into the fire, but I found something else. What? The deed history. I'd spent the evening on my phone, using a sliver of 3G signal near the window to access the county archives. This land was designated a watershed conservation easement in 1985. That means the county is responsible for the runoff management, not the private owner. If there is nitrogen, it's their job to filter it, not yours. She stared at me, her mouth slightly open. How did you find that? My lawyer didn't find that. I read the footnotes, I said. Nobody reads the footnotes. I live in the footnotes. She laughed, a genuine sound that cracked the tension in the room. You are a miracle, Langston Mitchell. She slid down from the hearth to sit on the rug next to me. Not touching, but close. The firelight danced on her face. She looked younger now, the lines of stress smoothing out. I thought I was going to lose it all, she whispered. This place. It was my dad's. He built it. It's all I have left of him. He died 3 years ago. We won't let them take it, I promised. And I knew, in that moment, I would spend every cent I had, call in every favor, to keep that promise. I stood up and moved the fire screen closer, securing the perimeter for the night. The twist came at 10 a.m. the next morning. The snow had stopped, leaving the world blindingly white. I was in the kitchen, fixing the hinge on the pantry door just because it was annoying me, screeching every time Veronica opened it for coffee beans when a heavy pounding shook the front entrance. It wasn't Vance alone. It was a sheriff's deputy. And Vance was behind him, looking smug in a pristine parka that had clearly never seen a worksite. Veronica opened the door, her face pale. Miss Foster, the deputy said, handing her a clipboard. We have a court order. Immediate cessation of operations. You have to evacuate the premises. Now. What? No! Veronica backed up. The hearing isn't until next week. You can't evict me from my own home. Emergency injunction, Vance said, stepping forward. He was a small man, smooth-faced and smelling of expensive cologne. We have reason to believe you are destroying evidence. We saw smoke. It's a fireplace! Veronica shouted, her voice rising in panic. We're trying not to freeze to death. The power is out. I stepped into the doorway, filling the frame. I didn't say a word, just let my size do the talking. Vance blinked, taking a half step back, almost tripping over his own boots. Who are you? Vance demanded, his voice pitching up. Langston Mitchell, I said. Independent environmental auditor. You're trespassing, Vance snapped. Deputy, remove him. I'm not a guest, I said calmly. I'm a resident working under a labor for lodging agreement. Show me the lease, the deputy said, looking bored. Veronica looked at me, panic flaring in her eyes. Under county winter hazard protocol, I said, my voice steady. On-site labor exchange can establish temporary shelter status until roads reopen. I logged the maintenance hours in writing. I pointed to the notebook on the table, where I had meticulously tracked the septic repairs. I have established residency under the Emergency Shelter Act. The deputy hesitated. He looked at Vance. He's citing the code correctly, Mr. Vance. If he's a tenant by labor during a hazard declaration, we have to go through the eviction process. Takes 30 days. I can't toss him out in the snow without cause. Vance's face turned a mottled purple. He's lying. He's her boyfriend. I'm her consultant, I said, my voice dropping an octave, hard as granite. And I'm documenting this interaction. I held up my phone. It was recording. You are attempting an unlawful eviction based on a falsified emergency declaration. Say hello to the ethics board, Vance. Vance glared at me, pure venom in his eyes. He knew he was caught on the procedure, but he had power. Fine. You have 24 hours to produce a certified hydrologist's report clearing the site. If you don't, I condemn the property at noon tomorrow for imminent health hazard. And I'll have your license pulled for conflict of interest if you sign it yourself. He spun on his heel and marched back to his SUV. The deputy tipped his hat to Veronica, looking almost apologetic, and followed. Veronica shut the door and slumped against it, sliding down until she hit the floor. She buried her face in her hands. He's right, she mumbled into her palms. I can't get a certified hydrologist up here in 24 hours. The roads are barely plowed. No one will come. I walked over and knelt beside her. I didn't touch her, but I put my body between her and the rest of the room, creating a shelter. I'm a certified hydrologist, I said. She looked up, tear tracks on her cheeks. But, he said, conflict of interest. If you're my tenant, or whatever we are, he'll challenge it. I'll resign, I said. What? I'm a partner at my firm. If I resign, I'm independent. I can sign the report as a freelance agent. No conflict. He can't touch it. Langston, no. She grabbed my arm, her grip surprisingly strong. You can't quit your job for this. You have a daughter. You have a mortgage. You have a life. The evidence supports you, I said, keeping my voice neutral. I can't let you do that. You're not letting me, I said gently. I'm choosing. It's my choice. The next 6 hours were a blur of controlled chaos. I drafted the resignation email on my phone but didn't send it yet. I needed the firm's letterhead access for one last hour to pull the necessary comparables. I pulled the samples. I ran the dye test again, documenting every second on video. Veronica was a whirlwind. She organized the files, she brewed coffee on the wood stove, she cross-referenced the easement codes I had found. We worked in perfect sync. No pass the salt polite nonsense. Just, hand me the wrench. Check this figure. Hold this light. I watched her as she worked. She was efficient, sharp, and resilient. She chewed on the end of her pen when she was thinking. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear with a quick, impatient gesture. I found myself memorizing these details, filing them away. By 8 p.m., the report was done. It was bulletproof. I had mapped the nitrogen flow, proved the upstream source from the ranch, and legally bound the county to the cleanup based on the 1,985 easement. I attached a formal disclosure of conflict and recusal from any previous firm ties, effective immediately upon submission. I hit send on the report to the county clerk, the state EPA emergency inbox, and Vance's boss. Then, I opened my resignation email. My thumb hovered over the send button. It was a terrifying leap. No salary, no benefits, just me and the unknown. I looked at Veronica. She was sitting by the fire, reading the final draft, her lips moving silently. She looked peaceful. I hit send. I put the phone down and exhaled. A long, shuddering breath. It was done. I was unemployed. But as I watched her turn the page, the ache in my back faded. I turned to find Veronica watching me. She was standing by the fire, holding 2 mugs of tea. Her shoulders had finally dropped, and she stopped wringing the dish towel. You really did it, she said. We did it, I said, standing up to take the tea. Our fingers brushed. This time, I didn't pull back. Why? She asked. Why go this far for a stranger? You barely know me. You're not a stranger, I said. You're the first person in 5 years who looked at me and didn't just see a tool to be used. You saw a partner. She set her mug down on the mantel. She took a step closer. The air in the room changed. It wasn't electric. Electricity is frantic, dangerous. The room went still. Even the fire sounded quieter. I don't want you to sleep on the floor tonight, she said. Her voice was steady, clear. My heart hammered against my ribs. I took a step back, my protective instinct kicking in. I didn't say sleep with me, she interrupted, a small, tired smile touching her lips. The fire is dying down out here, and the bedroom has the only other heat vent that works on gravity. She hugged her arms. And I don't want to be alone tonight. I looked at her. I saw the exhaustion, but also the trust. She wasn't asking for romance. She was asking for a sentry. She was asking me to be the wall between her and the world. Okay, I said. I'll take the chair. The bedroom was cold. seeing as the central heat was still off, but the quilt was thick. She crawled under the duvet, wearing flannel pajamas, pulling the covers up to her chin. I dragged the heavy armchair from the corner and placed it right next to the bed, facing the door. I sat down, fully dressed in my t-shirt and sweats, and stretched my legs out. We lay there in the dark, the silence of the snow pressing against the window. Langston? Yeah? The chair looks miserable. It's fine, I lied. My back was already protesting. There's plenty of room, she whispered. I hesitated. Then, slowly, I stood up. I grabbed the spare woolen blanket from the foot of the bed. I lay down on top of the duvet, keeping the thick layer of down between us. I covered myself with the wool blanket, stiff as a board, terrified of crossing a line. Thank you, she breathed. I turned my head to look at her. In the moonlight, she looked peaceful. Go to sleep, Veronica, I said softly. I'm not going anywhere. I kept one arm resting over my own chest, steady and still. I watched the rise and fall of her breathing until it slowed into a deep, rhythmic sleep. I didn't move. I just kept watch. Dawn hit the window before I realized I hadn't checked my bank balance once. The morning brought sunshine and Vance. He arrived with the confident stride of an executioner, flanked by 2 other officials. He didn't expect to see me opening the door, holding a mug of coffee, looking like I owned the place. Mr. Mitchell, Vance sneered. Time's up. Did you pack your bags? Actually, I said, handing him a thick envelope. I packed yours. What is this? Certified hydrological assessment, I said. And a printed receipt of the digital filing I submitted to the state EPA emergency board last night. They issued a temporary administrative stay at 7 a.m. It pauses all enforcement actions for 72 hours pending a formal hearing. Vance paled. That's impossible. They don't move that fast. They do when you flag a critical watershed hazard involving county negligence, I said. I stepped out onto the porch. Veronica stepped out beside me. She slipped her hand into mine. I also included a timeline of your inspections versus the development offers made to Miss Foster. The State Ethics Board confirmed receipt an hour ago. One of the officials behind Vance took the envelope. He read the summary page. He looked at Vance. You said there was raw sewage. There was, Vance spluttered. This data says it's mineral runoff from the granite shelf, the official said. That's me, I said. And since I resigned from my firm last night, this is an independent third-party audit. It holds up in court. The official nodded, a mark of respect. He turned to Vance. Get in the car, Jerry. We need to have a talk about your sampling methods. Vance opened his mouth, closed it, and slumped. He got in the car. The official turned to Veronica. Miss Foster, I apologize for the disruption. The administrative stay means you can continue limited operations while we investigate the county filter system. We'll set a hearing date for next month. Veronica nodded, her grip on my hand tightening. She turned to the official. Mr. Mitchell is our compliance lead officially. Please copy him on every notice from now on. He tipped his head to me. Nice work, Mitchell. Bold move, quitting the firm. News travels fast, I said. It does when you're good. They drove off. The silence rushed back in. But this time, it wasn't heavy. It was peaceful. The birds were singing. The snow was melting on the roof, dripping in a steady rhythm. Veronica squeezed my hand. She didn't let go. So, she said, looking up at me, you're unemployed. Technically, I'm a freelancer, I said. Open to offers. But I have a strict non-compete clause with myself about working for bullies. She turned to face me. The sun was hitting her eyes, turning them a warm hazel. I have a proposal. The summit needs a permanent compliance officer. The pay is strictly commission, based on bookings, for now, but the boss thinks you're incredible. My lawyer called just now, she added, her voice quieter. He admitted he missed the easement addendum. He's reopening the injunction file for free. Good, I said. Does the job come with room and board? And pot roast, she promised. I smiled. A real smile that felt like it cracked my face open. Contract first. Personal dinner later, only if we both want it after legal closure. Agreed, she said. I have a counteroffer, I said. I invest my severance package from the firm. It gives us a 6-month buffer. We upgrade the septic to a biofilter system so the county can never touch you again. I handle the compliance. You handle the guests. We sign a standard freelance contract to start, 30-day trial. I hesitated, looking at the screen of my phone where Maya's face was waiting. And I have a daughter, I said. She starts first grade in the fall. The school district here is small, good for kids who need attention. Veronica's eyes filled with tears. She reached up and cupped my face with both hands. Bring her, she whispered. There's a loft in the main lodge. It's perfect for a 6-year-old. We can set up the spare room for you properly. I leaned down. I didn't kiss her lips. We had time for that. Lots of time. I pressed my forehead against hers, closing my eyes, breathing in the scent of pine and rain that clung to her. It was a promise. A contract signed not in ink, but in breath and bone. Deal, I whispered. Are you the bear? She whispered back, a hint of a smile in her voice. I laughed, the sound rumbling deep in my chest. Only when I'm hungry. The end. Closing thoughts. The core lesson. I learned that building a strong foundation protects you better than fighting every storm. When you stand on integrity, you become the shelter someone else needs. Engagement. Please like and subscribe so we can share more stories like this.